Good afternoon and welcome to the January 25th, 2021 Park Advisory Committee meeting of the East Bay Regional Park District. Chair Rickard, would you like me to take roll?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Board President Di Rosario.
Here.
Vice Chair Obringer.
I'm here.
Member Best.
Here.
Member Burke.
Here.
Member Carey.
Here.
Thank you. Member Corkin.
Here.
He's here. Member DeChambeau. Member DeChambeau. She might not be here just yet. Member Dieter.
Here.
Thank you. Member Gregory. Oh, I don't see him. Member Ho.
Here.
Member Lacey.
Here.
Member Nason.
Here.
Member Robinson.
Here.
Member San Juan.
Here.
Member Skardoff. Member Skardoff, I believe he's here.
Here, I just was muted.
Thank you. Member Sutsui.
Here.
Member Williams.
Here.
Chair Rickard.
Here.
Okay, staff present today, Eric Fueller, Chief Cheerborough, Captain Alan Love, Sean Dugan, Lance Breed, Lisa Baldinger, Yuli Padmore, Deborah Ocker, Matthew James, Sydney Erickson with Prime Gov. Have I missed any other staff? Oh, Christina Kelchner, thank you. And
Sharon Juliana's here with the foundation.
Oh, thank you. And Juliana Schirmer. Thank you. I believe that's it.
Thank you. Today's Park Advisory Committee meeting is held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order allowing for committee members to participate in standing committee meetings remotely. We are also providing live audio streaming and have provided the public the opportunity to email or call in prior to the meeting for public comment. This information can be found on the agenda on the district website, ebparks.org. Do any committee members have any questions about the meeting procedures? No. If not, we will move on to our first agenda item. We are going to be addressed by our new board president, Di Rosario.
Thank you, Rick. I just wanted to say, I'll give you all a big welcome. We are starting 2021. I'm sure many of you feel a huge sigh of relief.
We have a quorum now, Kate? Randy's here?
I know when we got sworn in on the 12th, those words of defending the Constitution really had a certain gravitas to it, and I really thank you all as public servants as well as as well as my colleagues on the board and all of our staff that we take our duties seriously, and it's just refreshing that we have a different administration. And with that, I just wanted to thank you for surviving 2020. It's amazing what you have accomplished, even with those COVID-19 restrictions. And my colleagues on the board have noticed the huge goals you've set for yourself in 2021. And we appreciate your diligence. And I know that some of those goals may or may not be met, but we appreciate the effort. I think we're all under the same constraints, but I just wanted to thank you deeply for your commitment and to the land and to the Park District, and again commend you on your service. And with that, let's see. I think we're in for some big changes, as you know. We start interviewing for a new general manager starting tomorrow. We have 2 days scheduled out. And then at the same time, our staff is interviewing for a new HR officer. So we have some big changes, and we continue to have retirements. I think we had huge list of retirees, maybe a dozen people representing a couple hundred years of experience retired within the last couple of months. So those changes continue to happen, and and at the same time we continue to grow. And I think hopefully together we will be even better and stronger, and we will be able to serve our public. So thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Dee. Are there questions for Director Rosario? Carlin?
So it's not really a question so much as just I want to congratulate Chair Rosario for a successful reelection to the board, and also his service as president this coming year. So thank you very much for your leadership.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Other questions? We normally have a report from the foundation, but I noticed it's not on our agenda. And before I go on, Juliana, did you want to give us a report?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rick. So we're not going to give a full, huge report this month because we're planning to come before you in February with our annual 2020 year in review PowerPoint, basically listing how the foundation did and all of the metrics and membership and all of those good things. But I am happy to report that I think one of the last times I came before you, it was a little bit more dire news, and we were talking about the drop off in memberships with COVID and with the parks not collecting fees. But with the parks resuming the fee collection beginning January 4th, we saw a huge uptick beginning in November of people purchasing gift of memberships, renewing memberships, and even new members coming. So it's terrific news for us. We ended up ending the year about 10% off of our projection for the membership program. We had already done kind of a mid-year budget modification. The budget modification projected we'd be down about 40%. So we ended up being down about 30%. But I think given the year and all of the challenges that we all faced, that's to be expected. With our year-end appeal, we were off just about 10%. So again, I think knowing the amount of people that are out of work and unable to give or contribute at this time, we feel really positive about that as well. So anyway, new times ahead. We're excited. We're continuing to fund programs. And even throughout all of that, I did just want to say that, number one, we ended up having the largest fundraising year ever. That's in large part due to us taking on the $3 million Habitat Conservancy endowment. And we also gave our largest amount of service grants to the Park District. We gave over $600,000 in 2020, and we were able to maintain that commitment. So normally we gave it in about the $200,000 range, but we tripled our support. So just wanted to share that, and wanted to also offer all of you, if you're not members and you want to become a member, we would encourage you to do that as well.
Great. Thank you, Juliana.
Thank
We
you.
will look forward to hearing more from you in February. Are there any questions for Juliana? No, guess not. All right, the next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. And we actually have 2 minutes to approve: the minutes of the October 26th meeting and the minutes of the November 23rd meeting. I'm going to suggest that we approve them separately, since individuals may want to abstain from one or the other if they were not at the meeting. So let me open it up first for the October 26th meeting. Are there any comments or corrections to that minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion for approval of the October 26th, 2020 minutes.
I so move. This is Andy Carey.
I'll second that, Andy.
Moved by Andy and seconded by Carlin. Any further comments? If not, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rickard. Vice Chair Obringer,
Yes.
Member Best,
Yes.
Member Burke,
Yes.
Member Carey,
Yes.
Member Corkin. Oh, she might be muted. Member Corkin,
Yes. Sorry.
Member DeChambeau.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Dieter.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Gregory. Oh, he's not here. Member Ho.
Yes.
Member Lacey.
Yes.
Member Nason.
Yes.
Member Robinson.
Yes.
Member San Juan.
Yes.
Member Skardoff,
Yes.
Member Satsui,
Yes.
Member Williams,
Yes.
and Chair Rickard.
Yes,
Thank you, unanimous.
thank you. We'll move on to the November 23rd minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to be made?
I
If
move
not,
approval.
I'd second
I
that.
move approval, Best.
Okay, Linda Best moved approval and the second by,
Member Williams?
okay. Any further discussion? If not, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Here we go. Vice Chair Obringer.
Mute myself. Yes.
Thank you. Member Best,
Yes.
Member Burke,
Yes.
Member Carey,
Yes.
Member Corkin,
Yes.
Member DeChambeau,
Yes.
Member Dieter,
Yes.
Member Ho,
Yes.
Member Lacy,
Yes.
Member Nason,
Yes.
Member Robinson,
Yes.
Member San Juan,
Yes.
Member Skardoff,
Yes.
Member Satsui,
Yes.
Member Williams,
Yes.
and Chair Rickard.
Yes,
Thank you, unanimous.
thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
We did not receive any phone calls, but we did receive one email. And I believe we might have someone, I'm not sure. There's a gentleman, Mr. Abreu has a comment. And there was another gentleman that came on. Joel, did you have a comment as well? Are you just listening? Okay. Would you like to take Mr. Abreu's comment?
Yes, let's, Kelly, we'll give you 3 minutes, Kelly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. With respect to the public comments, it should be noted that the agenda was posted on Friday, and the deadline for requesting public comments was also Friday, the same day. So that's not, you're not providing enough time for people to read your agenda and decide whether or not they want to comment. As some of you already know, there are a lot of people on this committee who actually are part of local boards and agencies, county boards and agencies, city councils, and local agency formation commission of Alameda County, various things like that. So one of the most, and these are all very political bodies, one of the most political things that happens every 10 years is the redistricting of the County Board of Supervisors. Alameda County is scheduled to go through the redistricting this year. In order to ensure that the process is fair and equitable, a coalition has formed, the Alameda County Coalition for Fair Redistricting. The coalition has developed a set of recommendations that build on best practices and outline specifically what an inclusive redistricting process involves. If you go back 10 years ago and look at the maps of the county board districts right now, you'll see that they were heavily gerrymandered. There's a huge discrepancy between what the independent commission on redistricting recommended and what was actually adopted. And in fact, the chief of staff for one of the county supervisors actually publicly stated that yes, confirmed, yes, these were gerrymandered. Of course, they were gerrymandered in the interests of the incumbents supervisors. We have developed a list of recommendations that for the inclusive redistricting process. And given the amount of funds and services that are controlled by the county, representation matters. For example, the N3 Ranch is being steered in large part by the county, not just by Zone 7, not just by this park district. The N3 Ranch, 50,000 acres, county heavily involved with that. At this time, well, not right at this time, but we will be asking the board of directors of the East Bay Regional Park District to add its voice to the coalition in asking for a transparent redistricting process that allows for broad community input. And we anticipate making this through resolutions, a petition, public comment in county meetings and throughout the redistricting process. There are a huge number of groups and organizations that are involved. The Alameda County Central Committee of the Democratic Party, which is a very partisan organization, as you may have figured out, has already endorsed this. But this is actually also endorsed by the League of Women Voters, so it's a nonpartisan sort of thing. And I'm sure that all of you will be hearing about it, hopefully, through from a broad range of people who will be interested in what this Board of Supervisors does to redistrict themselves. Given what they did 10 years ago, we should all be paying very close attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Sharon, is Joel?
Yep, I've just popped in. Hello. Hey, sorry about that. Thanks for the introduction there, Sharon. Yeah, I'm just here trying to, I'm a cyclist, and I've just been watching the growth of mountain biking happen in the neighboring parks, and I'm just trying to wonder what the process is to see if we can try to get more cycling access within the East Bay Regional Parks. I've noticed that out at China Camp on the weekends, there's a half mile of cars parked on both sides of the streets, and most of those people are there for cycling. And it's just a shame that we have to travel so far to go get access to fun trails to ride, and just want to see what we can do to maybe get some more mountain biking access within the East Bay Regional Parks.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. We can't respond to public comments per se, but I will tell you that issues of trail use is on our agenda for this year, and we'll be discussing it, as well as there's a trail users working group that's working on those issues. So the Park District is well aware of the conflicts and trying to address them in the fairest and most equitable way possible. So thank you for the input.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, thanks. I'm mainly here just to kind of listen and see what the process is and how you guys are doing things, and to see how I can help facilitate that conversation as we go forward.
Great.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. All right, we will move on then to our presentations. The first presentation is the economic and social impacts of park improvement projects by Eric Feeler and Lisa Baldinger.
Thanks, Rick. And before we start on that item, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Sharon Clay for all the work that she's done to get these meetings going. It's been a particularly busy time, so apologies for the agenda being posted on Friday, but given everything that's going on, Sharon's really done a great job to keep things moving forward, so thank you. With regard to this item, I wanted to start out by saying, we were kind of joking on our earlier call about life before COVID. We entered the year thinking we were going to have, a great economy, great opportunities for additional resources for the parks. We were really looking forward to visits to Sacramento this year with a budget surplus. And lo and behold, what happened, and as part of that process, we were also looking at a possible climate bond. And the governor had it in his budget, and then it got taken out once COVID became apparent that it was going to be a international crisis. So we began to pivot on our thinking in terms of our programming for government and legislative affairs. And one of the things that came out very quickly was the need to, have the economy stimulated through investment, both from the federal level and potentially from the state level. And I know Annie Burks here in her day job, Together Bay Area, put together some statistics creation and impact of green infrastructure projects on the local economy. And as part of that, also, the Park District commissioned a report from Beacon Economics. I think they're a nationally known firm, but they're certainly well known in California. They do forecasting. They do our budget forecasting. I know Deborah Ocker and her team use them, rely on them quite a bit. But we wanted to commission a survey based on some of our large infrastructure projects. We are now doing projects that are, and I think if Sean is still here, you know, we're doing bridges over railroad tracks that cost $20 million. We're doing restorations of creeks and shorelines that are $10, $15 million. So these are large ticket items. And when we went to look back at some of them, we realized a lot of contractors are getting, and our own employees are getting, you know, we're employing a lot of people to conduct these projects. And so we wanted to take a deeper dive and look into that to see what kind of numbers we were talking about throughout the district. And so as part of that, we commissioned Beacon. And as part of that report, I would like to welcome Lisa Baldinger to, I'm not seeing her on my screen, but hopefully she's there to present on the findings from that report. And maybe we can have a conversation afterwards about how best to share this information, because it's something we really want to get out to the broader community and not just to our own folks. And we'll be using it for advocacy purposes as well. So Lisa, if you're there, can you?
I am here. I can assure that. Hello, good evening. Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Management Analyst with the district. And I'm just going to go ahead and walk us through the report at a high level so we can all get an understanding of what was involved. All right, so hopefully that looks good on everyone's screen. So today we're going to be discussing the East Bay Regional Park District Improvement Project's Economic and Social Impact Analysis conducted by Beacon Economics, as Eric shared. Before we dive into the report, though, I want to thank all of our colleagues as well as the Beacon team who contributed to this work in order to make an algorithm to look forward. We had to first look back at a lot of our projects, which meant compiling a lot of project report, budget, and information in order to make it an accurate, forward-thinking algorithm. So thank you to everyone who participated. And today, the report that we'll be discussing is really looking at two key areas. One is the impact of a project construction, so those one-time impacts of the project. And the second is once our projects are completed, they have an ongoing impact on the region and the economy. So the day-to-day operations of the project have continuous annual impacts. So we'll be discussing both as part of this presentation. As I shared, in order to look forward, we had to first look back. So you're all likely familiar with these different projects. Albany Beach Restoration, recently completed, very popular. Our Pinole Shores Bay Trail Bridge, as well as Dotson Family Marsh and some wetland restoration, green infrastructure projects. So it was a robust, complementary look at a variety of projects that the Park District completes on a regular basis. The next step was looking at our next 5 years of projects. So as you can see, our design and construction, trails, and environmental programs teams are hard at work. And we're looking at a project list of about 120 various projects to be completed within the next 5 years. For the purpose of this report, we narrowed it down to 93 that met the criteria. And as you can see, they span the region of Contra Costa, Alameda, East, and West. So all across the district are the different projects that we're looking at for their economic impact. Just so we're all on the same page, I'm going to first go over a couple key terms, and then we're going to look at the end results. So today we're going to be talking about the direct effect of a project. So that's that initial project cost and spending. The indirect effect, which is the supply chain and purchasing throughout the project. And then the induced effect, and that's our paying rent, buying groceries, getting lunch during the project. And then lastly, because we're talking about construction projects and others, these aren't specifically full-time equivalent positions. They're not FTEs. So we're talking in the term job years, and one job year of work is equivalent to one individual working for 1 year. And with that, we'll go ahead and share the results. So both the economic and fiscal impact of construction, as well as the ongoing operations, will be in the same format. On the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see the total for both direct, indirect, and induced. And then we'll walk through what that looks like on the breakout. So for construction, it's a one-time total impact. So for our 93 projects, it's 123 million in economic output of direct spending. This spending is supporting over 700 job years, which is equivalent to 72.5 million in labor income. And then additionally, it supports 15 million in tax revenue. When we then expand to include those indirect spending, that supply chain, we get an additional 42.1 million economic output, 230 job years of employment being supported, 17 million in labor income, and an additional 4.3 million in taxes. And then to really complete the picture, we're also going to include those induced spending, so the paying the rent, the groceries, restaurants, and that gets us an additional 48.8 million in economic output, 268 job years, 16 million in labor income, and an additional 6 million in federal, state, and local tax revenue. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that these 93 projects over the next 5 years are successfully supporting over 1,000 job years of employment, 107 million in labor income, over 25 million in federal, state, and local taxes, and a total economic impact of over $214 million. But the story continues. So once these projects are complete, they continue to have an impact on the economy because we're expanding access, we're incurring maintenance, we're continuing the work. So again, on the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see the total. This is a total annual. So every year, this amount continues to be invested in the economy. So the direct spending of operations is 12 million in economic output. An additional 70 jobs will be supported through the completion of this project, 9.4 million in labor income, and 2.2 million in tax revenue. Indirectly, it's an additional almost 6 million in economic output, 27 jobs, about 2 million in labor income, and 0.6 million in tax revenue on an annual basis. And then lastly, induced spending through folks paying their rent, et cetera, is about 5 million in economic output, 33 jobs supported, 2.1 million in labor income, and 0.8 million in tax revenue. So again, on the right-hand side of your screen, on an annual basis, once these projects are complete, they're able to support additional jobs, whether that be an expansion of park rangers, restaurant employees, local grocery stores, but they have that continued impact on the economy. And these numbers were based off of the completed projects that we shared at the start of this presentation. And you might have noticed in the title, it was called the Economic and Social Impact Report. So this report continues to give a robust overview of the Park District's role as part of the community. So not only are we helping to benefit and support the economy, but also we're providing wildfire protection, habitat restoration, lifeguard training and youth jobs, as well as employment opportunities and volunteering. And looking at our commitment to growth, our commitment to understanding through surveying, as well as generating local funding through our tax measures, such as Measure FF, Measure WW. And then lastly, you can see that we take that social impact and we really look at it. So it's been well known to the district that by engaging our community, we're able to gain support, which can translate into funding through local tax measures or bonds or grants, and that can become new and upgraded infrastructure. But thanks to this report, we now see that that circle is a two-way. So not only is the community supporting funding, supporting projects, but these projects support the community by generating funding. So just some high-level conclusions, and then we'll open up the conversation. We know ongoing improvements are necessary to ensure that our natural and cultural resources can be enjoyed now into the future. We also know that these projects wouldn't be possible without federal, state, and local funding support. We know that community engagement and connecting people with nature and an ongoing environmental ethic provides the path for continued funding opportunities. And now we also know that investments in the district's improvement projects will continue to generate direct, indirect, and induced economic benefits in the millions and job support in the hundreds annually. So thank you. And with that, I'll go ahead and close out the presentation.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Are there questions for Lisa or Eric?
I have a question. This is Andy Carey.
Okay, Andy.
It looks like the tax return on this is about maybe between 10 and 12% per outgoing costs. Is this comparable to other organizations? Are we more efficient or less efficient?
That is a question I will have to look into and get back to you.
Thank you.
Neil.
Great. Thanks for that presentation, Lisa. That's really interesting information. I'm wondering, what do we know about the spatial or geographic distribution of these impacts? Do we know if they're about even between Alameda and Contra Costa County? And do we know, for the jobs that are generated or the business that's generated, how much of that is for people or businesses that are beyond the two counties, beyond the Park District boundaries?
So for the purposes of this report, we did look at East Bay's specific job support. So this report is holistically looking at us hiring locally. But in terms of looking at kind of like, I'm picturing with your question, a heat map of here's the project, here's where the different staff persons are coming from. That would take a deeper analysis, which we hope to have in future years. But just for right now, I can say that we were kind of just looking at local hiring and local spending in the East Bay.
Great, thank you.
Just to add to that though, Lisa, and Director Rosario, did you want to step in?
You're muted.
I just wanted to ask, the numbers, are they from 2020? Or are they from, how many years are these numbers going back for this report?
The projects that we used for the analysis were recently completed 2019 projects. And then the projects that we are reviewing as part of the looking forward lens are set to be completed in the next 3 to 5 years. 3 if everything goes smoothly, 5 if it doesn't.
And I just wanted to add to Neil's question that we do have we have zones in the district that are designed so that like WW money is distributed equally throughout the district. So the board has been very intentional about that, and the projects generally tend to reflect that.
Carlin?
Yes, thank you. So I was just curious when I was looking at job impacts, do we know, or what is the, I guess I should ask, what is the board's policy in terms of hiring union labor for capital improvement projects? Does the board work with the building trades of Alameda and Contra Costa County, or how does that work?
Director Rosario, would you like to answer that question?
Right, yeah. That's something we are going to be hopefully part of a workshop. We hope to be more union friendly, and right now it's all based on we try to, I think the goal is to try and hire local contractors, and it doesn't preclude union, but we have had contractors that do that are union. So like, for instance, like in our JOC program, we have one contractor out of the 3 that's a union contractor. And the contractor that out at, that's doing the McCosker Creek restoration, $14 million, that's a union contractor. So it's a subject that I would like to pursue myself as a personal goal for myself to look at possibly increase our PLA possibilities. And we do have a PLA project labor agreement for the work that was done out at what is called Encinal Point, with the name, which is the working name there. But yeah, typically it's we put those out to bid, and it's either lowest bid or the most qualified.
Got it. So just to clarify, so there's not like a project stabilization agreement across the board for all projects or anything like that. It's like a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Annie, I see your hand, but I want to go to Christina first to answer this question.
Thank you, Rick. Director Rosario is exactly right that it is a case-by-case basis. And that, of course, we do pay prevailing wage for all of our work. And our own staff is unionized as well. So we do a lot to support union labor. And I just want to make a comment. Oh, the other thing I want to say about union labor is that so many of our projects are restoration projects and green infrastructure projects that they don't always have as big a trades component as traditional building projects. And so we're not always kind of the biggest fish that the unions are interested in, because of the nature of the work that we do. So that's something to just consider as well. And I did want to say one other thing about the green infrastructure projects and the projects that Lisa was going over in her presentation. So many of those projects are major restoration projects, and the ones that aren't restoration are active transportation projects like the Pinole Shores Bridge. And so in addition to the quantifying the jobs, something else that we're looking at that we'd like to be able to do is quantifying the carbon benefits of those projects. Our lands themselves sequester about 300,000 metric tons of carbon, which is like taking 60,000 cars off the road. And every time we do a big restoration project, that enhances the carbon sequestration even further. So we'd like to be able to quantify that, and which would then qualify us for additional funding. And we're hearing from our legislators that they're interested in us doing that. So something to look for in the future.
Thank you, Christina. Annie, you have a question?
It's such an amazing report. Thank you, Lisa, and everybody who was involved in making it happen. As Eric hinted at in the opening, I'm very interested in the scalability of it. I'm curious, we did look at jobs across the region that are related to natural infrastructure and climate resilience, but not at the depth and the level that you did in this report. And so I'm curious, one, if we can export your methodology to other parts of the region, but also I'm curious, perhaps more for this venue, if there were commonalities across different projects. Like, did you see themes in building bridges, or did the 93 projects could you group the kinds of projects in those 93 projects to tell a story about some themes and commonalities between them?
I would share that in terms of the depth of the report, we intentionally looked at a swath of sort of different intentions of the previous projects we looked at in terms of wetland bridges and whatnot to make it a complementary bundle, but we don't have like this specific project in this tag has these jobs supported. It was done in a larger grouping through the analysis. And so we're unable to break out the details to that depth and that extent. I'd be interested in that in the future, but for right now, it's really looking at a holistic picture of the Park District's impact on the East Bay.
Great. And I do think, to Christina's point, we probably could do that in a future survey because there are restoration projects, but then there's also construction, literal construction projects. So I think that's a really good tip, Annie. We'll file that away for the next report.
Sounds good. Thank you both.
Okay. Are there more questions, comments? Apparently not. So we will move on to the next presentation by the same presenters on legislative and government priorities.
Thanks, Rick. And we'll be sharing the screen, and our colleague Yuli Padmore is going to be driving, but she's also our acting legislative assistant and helped put this presentation together. So I wanted to make sure we acknowledged her great work on this. As you know, every year we set priorities for government and policy for our division or our unit. This helps us align with when we advocate in DC or in Sacramento or even locally. Obviously, our work plan changes when elections change. So to Dee's comment earlier, we actually see some opportunities at the federal level that weren't there last year. And then at the state level, surprisingly, there's a budget surplus. So we do have our work cut out for us in the next 2 years. And then of course there's COVID. So without further ado, this is the way we look at the East Bay Park District. We look through the lenses of our board members, wards, and congressional and state Senate and assembly member districts. What's not on here, of course, is that we have a new senator, Alex Padilla, who has been fairly supportive of environmental issues. I think he's a very bright guy. And we have some good contacts with some of the folks that he's hiring. So we feel very positive about him coming in and filling the great shoes of Kamala Harris. So for the federal government, we are looking at these as our broad issues. We have some more ward-specific issues that we'll discuss a little bit later. But on COVID relief funding, the CARES Act passed last spring, and the Park District applied. I think that's actually the letter there on the right. We applied for funding because we serve 2.8 million people. We never really heard back, but we did understand that the money was released to local assistance money was released to the State Department of Finance. And the State Department of Finance has been viewing strictly the money going to counties, and they haven't really considered special districts. So we just had a day today where we were doing virtual Sacramento visits, and I wanted to acknowledge Christina Kelchner and her support in those meetings. But we got a little bit of traction from a few offices that we talked to that they will make some calls to Department of Finance on trying to figure out how that process works, because we anticipate additional COVID relief funding coming through this year with the new administration, and the need is still there. So we're hoping to figure out that process. We've incurred about $3 million worth of direct COVID related non-personnel impacts. And so we're going to seek some reimbursement for those impacts. And we've kept parks open because the county health departments have told us to keep, have recommended that we stay open for people's mental and psychological and physical health. I think might have been mentioned earlier before we were taping that we are considering a build grant application. This is the federal transportation program that funds specific projects throughout the country. There's over $1 billion available in that funding. It's a very competitive program, similar to the Tiger program that was in place during the Obama administration. We're going to put together a suite of paved transportation or paved trails projects that we will hopefully submit in an application. And right now we are doing some data collection. So Adele, you mentioned the overcrossing of the Richmond Parkway. We're doing some data collection on safety and other impacts with what if we put in an overcrossing there, what would that relieve in terms of congestion and other impacts. So we're in that process right now with the eyes towards putting together an application. And we should say that the deputy secretary, the person who's been nominated to be the Deputy Secretary of Transportation, Polly Trottenberg, was the person that was the deputy when we received the build grant, and our federal advocate has a good relationship working relationship with her. Conservation Corps, this will also be something that we'll be looking at the state level, but last year, and I don't remember, Lisa, but we must have considered probably a dozen bills at the federal level on reestablishing Civilian Conservation Corps, Work Progress Administration, those types of programs that help us employ youth and provide job training. We see more opportunities for that coming up this year. And we've also been learning as we've been advocating for that a number of district staff have come up through the Corps. And so it's a great program to bring people into the park district and park profession. On wildfire and climate funding, that is sort of universal impact in the Western states. So we'll be advocating with FEMA, and FEMA's listed there next, to ensure that there's additional resources on the front end, meaning pre-disaster or pre-hazard mitigation, doing vegetation management, so that if and when a fire does hit, it's less catastrophic. And it's very expensive, takes a lot of work. So both the Corps, human power, and funding from federal and state sources, all of that is very much needed to do that great work. And the Land and Water Conservation Fund last year was permanently reauthorized and has been allocated full funding. So it's more now like an entitlement program like Social Security, and not subject to the appropriations process. So it'll be $900 million annually available for Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's been slow to be implemented, but we believe that there'll be some momentum this year to move to advance that. And what that means for Park District is we've secured over $16 million in LWCF funding over the years, and we will use that money to match our own and to match state money for project development and some of the work that Lisa just mentioned in our previous presentation. And then the Department of Interior relationship, that's getting acquainted with the first Native American Secretary of Interior. She was a member of Congress, and she has a staff person who used to work for Mike Honda that our organization has a working relationship with. So that is a very positive for us. And it also will hopefully help when it comes to things like the Concord Naval Weapons Station and having that joint visitor center out there with the National Park Service. And then even for Land and Water Conservation Fund implementation. So we're really looking forward to working with the Department of Interior. Next slide, please. And then, as I mentioned, we look at these, the district through the lens of state Senate and state assembly. These are our state senators. Nothing has changed or will change there for the next 2 years unless something dramatic happens. Next slide, please. Their Senate committee assignments are out. Bob Wojciechowski has a very important role on budget and for environmental related issues. We were just talking with him today. Obviously, climate change is a very high priority of his, so we'll be working with his office on that. We did have a good conversation with Bill Dodd today as well, and his, he represents Napa and Sonoma along with Martinez in a section of Contra Costa County. So we spent a lot of time talking to him about wildfire and doing the work on the front end to avoid a catastrophic fire in the future. Nancy Skinner is now chair of the Budget Committee. That's a very powerful position in the Senate. So we're working with her office on some of our budget priorities, and we had a great conversation with her staff today. And then Senator Glazer has been a strong supporter of the district, not on a committee of necessarily of import, agriculture a little bit because of our grazing tenants and some of the programs that we work on in that realm, but good friend of the district, so we're glad to still have him there. Next slide, please. And state assembly members, we do have a new assembly member in the far lower left-hand corner on your screen. He's a new member from, I think he's actually from Santa Clara County, but Alex Lee is and he's a young gentleman, so we're looking forward to meeting him actually on Wednesday. So we'll be having some virtual visits again Wednesday with some of these assembly members. Next slide, please. And I believe this is where Lisa takes over. Oh no, I do this. I'm sorry. I continue to do the committee assignments. Sorry. Jim Frazier, no longer on the Transportation Committee, but still a chair of a committee. We had a good conversation with Tim Grayson today. He's very supportive of the Park District. Buffy Wicks, not necessarily on that many committees of importance, but a huge park fan. She has young children that she brings to the parks frequently. Assemblymember Becky Bauer-Cahan, similar situation, has young children that she brings to the parks, big supporter, was able to help get us funding for the McOsker Creek Restoration project that was mentioned by Christina earlier. And Rob Bonta, who's actually, his name has been floated as a possible Attorney General candidate now that our current Attorney General is being nominated for a federal cabinet post. So stay tuned, but for now he's on the Appropriations Committee, which is very powerful. And Bill Quirk, Chair of Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials, that has been a good place for us to work with him with regard to blue-green algae, with regard to cleanup of the Lake Chabot Gun Club. So he's been a big supporter of the Park District. And as mentioned, we're looking forward to meeting Assemblymember Lee later on this week. Next slide, please. And now it's Lisa's.
All right, to continue with our state focuses for 2021, wildfire and climate funding continues to be a focus for the Park District, looking for both vegetation management as well as fire response equipment support. And then with climate funding, we continue to look on how to best prepare our shorelines for sea level rise to protect inland communities as well as the park's resources. And having conversations specifically around SB 45, which has been reintroduced at the state level, which is a climate bond. Two key areas in the climate bond that the Park District is interested in seeing expanded on, and we're speaking with our delegation about this week, is $100 million for the Bay program of the Coastal Conservancy, which has a holistic wildfire and upland approach. And then specifically looking to expand funding for green infrastructure. So looking at large infrastructure projects through an environmental lens for the safety of our communities. Next, Department of Finance and COVID relief funding. So to date, the Park District has incurred about $7 million in COVID impact funding. A portion of that will be being reimbursed by FEMA. Another portion is staff-related costs that are likely not reimbursable, but about $3 million is public safety, education, PPE, additional restroom services for the public that we do hope to work with our state delegation to receive reimbursement for the impacts on the agency. Cal OES funding, continuing to have discussions about wildfire vegetation management. We are, I believe it's still the only agency in the East Bay who has our permitting to do a removal of vegetation in the hills for fire mitigation. In 2017, this removal was shown as great success when a fire began near Grizzly Peak, and we were able to quickly put it out because of the vegetation management. So we know that it's a tested and successful endeavor. Nuisance abatement legislation. So as an agency of over 125,000 acres, we have about 4,000 neighbors who could potentially just expand a little bit on our land, ultimately having an impact on our wildfire safety efforts and our habitat resources, et cetera. And so we're working with Mid-Peninsula Open Space to introduce a piece of legislation to give the Public Resource Code 5500 agencies, which are independent special districts. There are 4 of us in the state, to give us the same abilities as a city or a county when it comes to handling encroachments on our land. And so we're having some successful conversations around that. Next of our priority is looking at a regional funding measure. This is potentially something that a state legislator would have to introduce, and it could ultimately become a bond or some other funding mechanism, but continuing conversations with Together Bay Area and other entities who are looking into Bay Area specific climate and other resource needs. The Cutting the Green Tape Initiative, this is an initiative through the California Resources Agency, as Wade Crowfoot championing it, as well as the California Landscape Stewardship Network, which is a network of networks who are looking to advance good intention stewardship projects in a swift timeline. Sometimes those timelines are precluded by the permitting system. So identifying within existing permitting structures how they can encourage other agencies to use potential exemptions that don't compromise the overall project intent, or create introduce legislation to further advance the permitting. Right now, where Cutting the Green Tape is it's a document. We'd be happy to email it over to you with a series of recommendations. These recommendations are going to be advanced to roundtable discussions to talk about how to implement them through either culture change or state legislation. So the Park District is supportive and participating in these efforts. State park relationships with a new director of state parks. We were able to meet recently and discuss the various state parks that the Park District operates and maintains. Thank you, Annie, for assistance in that connection. And just continuing our relationships with state parks, as you're all aware, with Crown Beach, Del Val, and McLaughlin East Shore State Park under the district's jurisdiction. Prop 68 implementation in 2018, it was wonderfully successful when that $4 billion bond went into place. Now it's a matter of making sure that the Park District applies for and receives the appropriate grant funding through the bond. We're working right now to secure our per capita funding, as well as local entities operating state park funding. So we're working with our grants team, grant manager Katie Hornbeck, in ensuring that Prop 68 is implemented in the East Bay. And then lastly is dead tree removal, which is quite the title. And unfortunately, across the district's lands, we're finding not only is acacia dying, but eucalyptus as well. And it's identified that there is a strong need for large vegetation removal for the prevention of wildfire to the best of our abilities. So we're working on an internal task force with our stewardship team and our fire team to identify appropriate funding sources to begin this work. At this time, we believe it's about a $3 million endeavor. And so advancing that is a bit of a lift, but it's very necessary. And we also don't believe that the Park District, the East Bay Regional Park District, is the only entity being impacted by this. We see it on East Bay Mudlands, UC Berkeley lands. And so we're really working to create some regional dialogue around that issue. Next slide, please. All right, and then our last district map is our supervisor, and we'll go ahead and talk about local issues, and then I'll pass it back to Eric to do some ward-specific issues. So local issues here in the East Bay that we look forward to working with you all to advance this year. The first one is the continuation of our Park and Public Interest Study, which began in 2019. And this work is now transitioning into a strategy for inclusive community engagement. The strategy is really 3 key parts: to listen, coordinate, and understand. Listen is consisting of working with the Center for Regional Change at UC Davis to host facilitated stakeholder discussions. Thank you to those of you who have agreed to participate in our first listening sessions of existing EBRPD stakeholders. We're really looking forward to hearing your ideas of how we can expand our robust engagement opportunities. The second is coordinate, so doing an internal assessment of all external facing EBRPD staff members and figuring out how we can best coordinate across divisions for successful and inclusive community engagement. And then lastly is understand. We have a wonderful team of environmental policy and management master's students who wanted to do a project that focused on policy change and GIS skills. And so they'll be building for us some local community information guides, taking what is a 2.8 million population 2-county region and making it a little bit smaller in 6 specific local information guides, looking at demographics, survey responses, and other information. Next is explore feasibility of revenue zones throughout the district. So as part of our annual efforts in government affairs, we do public surveying that ranges from where would you like to see investments go and where are you willing to make investments? So we continue to explore if there's potential opportunity to expand revenue support in the region. Board member redistricting is coming up. We're expecting the 2020 census to come in about May of this year. And so we're working with our legal division to onboard a redistricting consultant to begin the process of GIS analysis, census analysis, and community input for redistricting of the East Bay wards. We'll be continuing the amplification of the Beacon Economics Report, which we did here today by sharing it with you all. And if you have any thoughts of other forums where it would be appropriate to share those numbers, we'd be happy to hear from you. Continuing to build relationships with parks commissioners and city councils as they themselves are advancing in their career and how the Park District can serve their and their community's interests. The San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority and Measure AA grants, a $500 million grant for Hayward Shoreline in the Park District is advancing at this time, which we're really excited about, and we're hoping to continue to apply for and advocate for East Bay funding through that program. And then lastly is the Bay Area Toll Authority Regional Measure 3 implementation. So as funding comes from this toll program, investing in active transportation and other appropriate projects. And with that, I'll pass it back to Eric for ward-specific issues.
Yeah, and on the toll authority, the issue there is they're collecting the money, but they're not spending it because there's a lawsuit about whether that constitutes a tax. And I did want to point out on the county map, we do have a new county supervisor in Alameda County, Dave Halbert. We met with him relatively recently and seems very enthusiastic about the Park District, so that's great. And here we're looking at our ward districts. And next slide, please. And we wanted to look at these projects through the award lens as opposed to federal, state, or local, because they are actually, in some cases, they are multiple jurisdiction. Like the first one, the Oakland Army Base cleanup and transfer. That's an issue regarding the Army, the Department of Toxic Substances, and also the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So that's actually something Christina's team has been working on to try to get resolved in terms of what level of cleanup. That land will be transferred to the Park District for Judge John Sutter Regional Shoreline, but the marine sediment cleanup level is still to be determined. So Christina's team's working on that. The Concord Visitor Center, again, this is somewhat multi-jurisdictional, but for sure, National Park Service and our member of Congress, Mark DeSaulnay, we'll be working with him specifically on funding for the Visitor Center at Concord. East County Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy has been a very successful program. I think Juliana mentioned that we're now carrying their endowment, but it has brought thousands of acres to the Park District in East County. It's really specific to primarily to Director Lane and Director Coffey's wards. And it's also pretty tied closely to Representative Jerry McNerney in terms of the funding coming from the federal government, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Alameda Point, this is an issue where we're trying to develop a new park on the point, but Veterans Affairs, it has the bulk of the property there, and they are building a columbarium and medical service center. The work on the columbarium is beginning very soon, and we are trying to work in cooperation. We're part of a team that's been in communications about how we can move all these projects forward together, but primarily an Alameda focused issue. So Director Corbett. And then Burlington Northern, Santa Fe and Miller Knox, that's been our issue to try to keep trains out of the park. Seems like we're having good success with that, but we wanted to keep it on here just to make sure that we didn't lose track of it. And then the two potential land acquisitions, Tesla legislation, and the N3 Ranch, we leave on here to make sure that we're tracking. And that is our work plan for this year. And hopefully it will not get changed with another dramatic event. So we'd be happy to take any questions. And if any other D or other staff want to comment on some of the meetings from today or other issues, happy to have that conversation as well.
I see a question from Olivia.
Hi, yes, thanks for a great presentation. On the slide that Lisa showed in terms of building relationships, I also would recommend adding water agencies to that list. I actually see a lot of overlap between what the East Bay Regional Park District is doing and what water agencies are doing.
Yeah, and as you know, Olivia, we manage a number of reservoirs for like Alameda County Water, Del Val. So that's a very good point. We'll add that.
Thank you.
Carlin, you have a question.
Yeah, so thank you for a great, very informative presentation as always. And I know that you, the Park District is very active on social media, and I was just kind of looking through, you have a lot of likes and followers just on Facebook. But the engagement is like a small portion, right? Which is how it always is with social media. But I'm just wondering in terms of, have you ever thought of doing any cross-pollination as you're trying to build the relationships with the local and the statewide electeds? I can tell you, I know that parks are extremely popular in my own community. And so have you ever thought of doing, like I said, some cross-pollination or maybe inviting local electeds or state electeds to participate in some of the social media that you're doing in the different wards and across the park district as a way to kind of amplify your message about the parks or whatever your goals might be in a particular geographic area?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question because it also gives us an opportunity to highlight some of the work that Yuli has been doing while an acting legislative assistant. So during COVID, we started doing regular emails to our elected offices containing initially just information about safety for park visitation, the type of information we are getting the most questions around. But over time, we've transitioned it to be regular updates on events occurring in the parks, most recently our Trails Challenge, to the offices to share some good news that the parks is doing. And it's able to be amplified then through newsletters, social media channels, and other similar information. So that's absolutely something that we are working to cultivate and broaden. And so we've had a lot of success through doing regular email updates to our elected staff with up-to-date information on what the park is doing.
Great, thank you.
But Carlin, that's a great point because those emails, we have not necessarily reached out to officials from cities. So you're giving me an idea that maybe we should do that outreach and have it, if somebody wants to opt in to getting those messages, that'd be worth investing some time in.
Great.
Okay, Igor.
Oh, thank you. This is a very interesting and inspiring list of aspirations, and given a track record, I think there's a good chance a lot of that's going to actually happen. So it's very heartening to see this. I was especially taken by the item having to do with cutting green tape. That's an issue that's been near and dear to my heart for a long time. It just seems like we almost treat an environmental project like an enemy that we needs to kind of overcome a lot of resistance and treat it the same way as somebody who might want to just pave the whole area. So I was wondering, is there anything that we can do, or maybe from my own district, my Resource Conservation District, or LAFCO, anything that you can think of that may be helpful in moving that effort forward?
Igor, I see that Christina popped up, and I know Lisa knows this issue very well too, but thank you from knowing that you're on a board for the Resource Conservation District. That is actually, we were introduced to this topic from, or at least better explained from an individual that works at a Resource Conservation District. So the link is very much there, but I'll hand it over to either Christina or Lisa to speak more about it.
Yeah, thank you, Igor. This is a really important issue, and I think resource conservation districts are well poised to be champions for this issue because you understand beneficial projects that, projects that benefit the environment, and that they're not the same as like a residential development project or a commercial development project, but regulations wise, they are often treated the same way. And so in presenting this today to our representatives, there was a lot of interest in that. And I think that there's a recognition that we need a bit of a paradigm shift, that our environmental regulations look at a specific project and the individual impacts of that specific project. So they're looking at the risks of taking an action, but we need tools to be able to look at the risks of inaction. So if we don't restore our wetlands, if we don't restore our marshes, if we don't sequester carbon, if we don't take some action, that there are longer term environmental benefits, and we need to be able to weigh those in the equation. And right now our regulations don't really lend themselves to that. So for our fuels management in the Oakland Hills, it took us 8 years to get that permit. We're needing to set aside, a 3-to-1 land ratio, the same way as if we were building, housing. Yeah. And we think overall it's going to have a benefit to the whipsnake habitat, and of course to public safety and forest health and all of that. So I think from your perspective, I think getting involved with the Cutting the Green Tape initiative, there are ongoing conversations, and I know Annie knows a lot about that as well. And so I think participating as a stakeholder and just adding your voice to the conversation would be helpful.
Well, I'll make sure it gets on our next board meeting agenda so we can highlight it there and kind of build some momentum, perhaps.
Great.
We can introduce you to the person that explained the initiative to us as well, Igor. So we'll do that offline.
Great.
Okay. I see several hands here. Let me try to cut through this. Dee, I see your hand, and Linda, but I want to point out that Lisa posted the link to tell me what it is. It's the green.
Correct. So in the chat, I put the link to the final Cutting the Green Tape report, which includes all of the recommendations from the California Landscape Stewardship Network and the Department of Natural Resources.
Great. Thank you. Yes, that's on the chat if you want to get that link. Dee, you go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that to Carlin's question, that we do virtual walk and talks in town halls with a lot of our electeds. And we could probably, I don't know, it's probably a capacity issue, but we could probably extend that to even our local electeds in the counties and cities too.
And if I could just respond to that, some of us have gotten more involved with making videos for cities and small business. But if there's a particular message that, that folks might like for local electeds to communicate, if you want to share that, for example, I'm happy to share that information with the Mayor's Conference and be like the Contra Costa liaison, because there are quite a few elected officials that have become more savvy, or we're getting savvier with social media and creating videos. And if you'd like us to highlight a park in our area, I'm happy to help facilitate that if that would be helpful.
Linda D.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Eric and Lisa. I'm always so impressed with everything going on. A little off topic, but I do think this is along the lines of relationships and community building, and maybe it's something you're doing, just like water agencies. But I was curious, similar to the mention of the Conservation Corps for youth and job training, if we considered or perhaps taking advantage of two other programs. One is the Climate Corps, and the other is Civic Spark. I always forget which one, but one of them is part of the AmeriCorps program, and one of them's more of a nonprofit. But there's some minimal amount of funding needed by the agency doing the hiring, but it's a relative small amount to the work that can be provided, and it's a real win-win opportunity for training the next generation to come to our park and work and serve our parks, and in return they get skilled in environmental policy and legislation.
Okay. Roland, I saw your hand earlier, but it went away. Do you still have a question?
I kind of did. I think it's already been answered, but perhaps to put a fine point on it. I was just being a wastewater guy. I have a lot of friends that work for EPA. They're pretty excited about what the potential future years are coming are going to have. They do anticipate having a lot more funding available for grants and other things like that. Do we track, particularly around water quality issues, do we track grants and projects that come directly out of EPA, or do we do that more through our federal liaisons?
I can take a first stab at that one. Hi, Roland. Yes, we do track EPA grants directly. We have close relationships with the folks at EPA that administer those grants. So our grant department is tracking those. That being said, if you become aware of any that you think we should know about, please pass them along, because we track a lot of things. But yeah, we've had great success with EPA grants, and we can all celebrate that there may be more money coming for them to staff back up and carry out their mission.
Great, thank you, Christina.
And we do, Roland, we do advocate for grant programs and trying to be eligible, particularly at the federal level for special districts. So it's very much something that we are tracking. And I think, as Christina indicated, we're optimistic that some additional resources will be coming. EPA in particular has you typically get some funding sponsored by Senator Feinstein for Bay programs. So and I know we've applied to that in the past, and we'll keep tracking it. But thank you for mentioning it.
Great, thank you, Eric. I see no other questions on this topic. So if that's the case, let's move on to the next item. A little background on this final item, which is the Park Advisory Committee work plan. As all of you are aware, we developed a work plan and goals for this year, which Eric and I presented to the executive committee and the board over the last couple of months, and that's been approved by the board. This item is to basically approve and put together the calendar for this work plan for 2021. So Eric, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, my unmute button was getting moved by the screen share. Yes, and this is, we do ask for a recommendation just so that we recognize that we have put all the items that were approved by the board into a work plan for the year. And there's nothing on here that's different than what were in the goals and agenda items that were approved by the board. I did learn from Juliana that I need to make a change to February and add the foundation report to that. So this is already a fluid document, but just a couple of highlights. We are, Carol Victor is our interim general manager, and they are working on a year in review presentation. So there's a chance we may be seeing that in February. And then also the dog use policy update may have been available for tonight, but we as was mentioned earlier, we were kind of rushing to pull together the packet. So it didn't make it, but we will be able to review that in February. I think Lisa mentioned the strategy for inclusive community engagement. That'll be an item in March, and we're very much looking forward to hearing the developments about that. Typically, June is our month to look at financials, so the CAFR and also DW and FF. But this is also the month that our team that's working on diversity, equity, and inclusion felt that there would be enough information to provide a report. So it's a long agenda, but typically the FF and WW pieces aren't quite as long, so hopefully we can get all 4 of those items in. And then just to the attention and the comments made earlier about trails, we're sort of targeting September 27th for our report back from folks about their users working group. I'm sure that the chair and members Ho and Gregory will provide reports throughout the year, but we'll have a more formalized report in September, and then also be considering the mountain bike, e-bike, and scooter issue as a separate item. And then of course, November is the budget. And if we're all vaccinated, maybe December 10th, we can have a holiday dinner together. I will say we did not put the barbecue on just because we're kind of playing that by just, we'll see how things go in terms of health. But if we are able to do things in person like that, then we would try to add a barbecue meeting somewhere along the lines toward the end of the year, most likely. So with that, I think, open for questions, but would also just, it's kind of precursy, or I'm not sure if I can get the right word to come, but we want a formal vote, but it's really not that formal of a vote, because this obviously is a very fluid document throughout the year.
Great. All right, if there are, I see no questions, I would take a motion approving the recommendation for the work plan for 2021.
I would so move.
Igor moves.
I'll be glad to second.
Annie seconds. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rickard. Vice Chair Obringer?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Best?
Yes.
Member Burke?
Yes.
Member Carey?
Yes.
Member Corkin? Member Corkin? Member DeChambeau? Oh, we're losing people. Member Dieter?
Yes.
Member Ho?
Yes.
Member Lacey?
Yes.
Member Nason?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member San Juan?
Yes.
Member Skardoff?
Yes.
Member Satsui?
Yes.
Member Williams?
Yes.
Chair Rickard?
Yes.
Member Gregory?
I'm late, but replacing anyone who fell off.
Thank you.
And this is Linda. I'm here. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. All right. Thank you all. We are now open for member comments from the committee. Anyone raise your hand or let me know if you're interested in commenting? Igor.
Well, thank you. This is the year that my term expired. And this morning, we had a Special Districts Association meeting, and they kindly nominated me to have a second term. So in case the information hadn't got to you some other way, it's here
well,
now.
Nice to have you back. Thank you. Roland.
Similar to Igor, I wanted to announce that the Alameda County Special Districts Association did reappoint me to the Park Advisory Committee for another cycle. So you're kind of stuck with me for another couple of years. And the second question, I have a question and then a comment. is there a speed limit on all park trails? And I believe it's 15 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's the case. I think we have Captain Love and Captain Breed in here if they're available to answer your question.
Hello, everyone. Yes, to answer the question, Roland, it is 15 miles an hour across the district.
Okay, thank you. My oldest daughter and her family, her husband, and that they live out near in Brentwood so we rode our bikes on the trail out to Big Break, and there are bikes that are going by. They're talking about trails and multi-use. It's a pretty fairly used trail. There are a lot of bikers that use the trail, and they're greatly exceeding the speed limit, which I hadn't noticed until now. I'm riding the bike with my grandchildren, and I'm noticing that it is a very dangerous situation over there. But I also noticed there aren't any posted. There's no signs that post the speed.
Yeah, all of our park facilities and all of our brochures do indicate that in Ordinance 38 that the speed limit is 15 miles an hour. So that is pretty widely publicized. And anytime we do receive any type of complaints or issues related to speed, we definitely address that. We get officers out there and create patrol priorities and try to curb that kind of activity. In non-COVID times, we also utilize our volunteers to set up information booths. We haven't been able to set up those booths for quite a while, but we'll definitely pass the information on to our patrol to ensure that we address those concerns. We have been seeing an uptick across the district at various parks, whether it be our inner parks like Briones with equestrian versus bike issues, or Tilden Park, Redwood Park, but also in our multi-use trails, Alameda Creek Trail, also Delta de Anza, Marsh Creek is probably where you're referring out in the Brentwood area.
Creek, yes. Mm-hmm.
So we'll definitely pass on that information. But we have seen a huge uptick in usage in the district during these times.
Roland, I would add that the Trail Users Working Group is also going to be taking a look at the conflicts between users. So hopefully we can come up with recommendations for Ordinance 38 to improve the situation. Neil, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to follow Igor and Roland and say that I'm absolutely thrilled that I will be joining you also for another 2 years, as I've been also reappointed by the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors in my case.
Great. Other comments by members? Andy.
Just wanted to say I really appreciate the 2 presentations we got today. Those were very informative. I was so busy thinking about them, I didn't have a chance to say so at the time. So thank you for presenting those.
Great, thank you. I see you, Michael, but let me get Carlin first and then Michael.
Thank you. Just very quickly, since we last met, I've been trying to keep a New Year's resolution of getting out into parks that I have never been to before. And I just have an even deeper appreciation for this park district and all of the work of the staff, enjoying Big Break most recently, Carquinez Strait. And also, I had not been out to Antioch to Black Diamond in 13 years, so I forgot how strenuous it can be. But my little dog Coco, who's 16 pounds, was able to make it up and down all the hills. And so I'm just expressing gratitude at this time, since we weren't able to go anywhere else, right, over the holidays. It's wonderful to be able to enjoy these parks in our backyard. So thank you.
Great. Other comments? Oh, Michael, I'm sorry, I forgot you.
Yeah, well, I won't forget you. Don't worry. Hey, anecdotally, I'll direct this to public safety. Has there been an uptick in citations regarding e-bikes and excessive speed in general? Because the parks have been heavily impacted in the last year. So is there a percentage, 5%, 10% that something's in terms of number of citations? I know we don't have enough people to cover all these places, but the most egregious ones we probably take care of. or accidents for that matter.
Hey, this is the chief. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well, Chief.
Yes.
Hey, well, good evening, PAC. Anthony Chaburo, your Assistant General Manager and Chief of Police. Thank you for asking that question. I would say this about public safety: we're dogged, determined, and on duty. And I am very proud of the performance that the officers have undertaken. They have written many citations in the stewardship area. And when we talk about citations, we go right to our values, which is safety, service, and stewardship. And of course, safety is our number one value. And then we get down to stewardship. That's about preservation of the lands and environmental types of situations. So I would say that really, as Captain Breed said, I'm very proud of our staff. We continue to not only educate, but to write citations. So I would tell you that citations commensurate with an increase in patron load are up. And I don't have those stats at my fingertips in terms of touching at my fingertips in terms of what they are year to year. I can't tell you anecdotally, we are receiving more calls regarding what Captain Breed talked about, trail conflicts. We are also increasing our social media efforts in that way and directing our social media towards that as an alternate way to ameliorate that instead of the direct contact, whether that is education or citation. So I would say business is up, and the majority of our park users are consistently abiding by the rules, and then we do have occasion when they're not, but there are many people out there, and I would say that's why we are issuing more citations.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Olivia, you have a comment.
Well, pardon me, but can I just interject something, Michael, to your question? We have been able to use cell phone data to determine increase in use, and we are fairly comfortable in saying we've had a 30% use in our parks and trails during this year. So it would stand to reason that citations would be going up given the, as Tony said, the patron load increase.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah. Olivia?
Hi, yes, real quick. I saw Eric actually over the weekend as I was heading towards our local trail. Eric and I are neighbors, and the trail goes along the Arroyo del Val here in Pleasanton. And I know recently in front of the Pleasanton City Council, there was a project that helped fund or is going to produce some funds for a portion of the trail between downtown Pleasanton and Shadow Cliffs, one of our parks within the East Bay Regional Park District. And I know I've talked about this before, but I just want to throw this out here. I'm really wanting to see us get that ball rolling again to think about this trail from downtown Pleasanton to Shadow Cliffs. And I know I'm currently serving as president of Zone 7 Water, which does have a lot of the land in that, or at least the creek area in that space. So anything we can do to work together, please let me know. But that's something that I know I'm personally wanting to see happen.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? The next item is report from the chair. I don't have anything new to report, but I will just reiterate that that Adela and Michael and I are on the Trail Users Working Group, and we will be reporting back from time to time as we meet. The next meeting is February 19th. So if you have concerns beyond those we've heard tonight, and you want to share with any of the three of us, please do that. Let us know. The next item is board committee reports. I don't expect to get anybody reporting on that, but I will just make mention of the fact that the one silver lining to COVID has been that the committee meetings are now all broadcast on YouTube, and I have found it very easy to attend those meetings when there's a topic that's of interest to me on the agenda. You don't have to make it all the way down to Peralta Oaks. So if you see the agenda for committee meetings and there's something on there that's of interest to you, it's an easy way to find out what's going on. So just mention that for now. Is there any old business? Any new business? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting. We're a little early, so I expect we could probably stay online if people want to chat a bit, but otherwise it's over. Free to go, have dinner, enjoy your evening.